What does a successful NFL season look like to you? What will make you happy come Super Bowl?
You asking Kenny what'll make him happy? You're hoping for some philosophical answer. That's one thing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, a very big special NFL edition. I can't wait. I'm super jacked. All right, I'm your host, Shane Mercer, and this is the only podcast purifying the sports betting industry. Remember to like, download, subscribe, follow us on all the socials, and you can find us everywhere you get your podcasts. If you have a betting story you want to share, comment below. We'll bring it up on the show. We might even bring you on the show. All right, and if you want to join inplayLIVE, we would love to have you. We got a special promo code for you. That is the Behind the Lines promo code. All right. I am so excited for today's episode because I love the NFL. Who doesn't? Biggest sports betting market in North America by far, maybe even the world. All right. On the show today, we've got John Wilson, also known as GosuThune. We've got the Golden Goose himself, Kenny Huber. And as always, the founder of inplayLIVE, Andrew Pace. Welcome in, guys. What a week almost behind us. We are recording this on a Monday, so week one isn't officially behind us, but most of it in the rearview mirror. John, I'm going to start off with you. What is your biggest takeaway from this past weekend?
I think the biggest takeaway for the NFL side this past weekend actually was maybe not something to do with like kind of the live betting, though it does fall into that category, but it was just how sloppy a lot of these teams looked. And now that we're in this new era where teams aren't playing in the preseason at all, like especially in those first half of the first slate of games, there was just a lot of nasty football, which really created a lot of value, I think, for us. Obviously, as we definitely like when people struggle to score, to move the ball. But that was definitely one thing that really popped out at me, was just how nasty a lot of those games looked to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, that Sunday nighter, just ugly. What a thumping the Cowboys laid on the Giants in New York with the rain pouring down. But you're right, we saw a lot of teams really struggle offensively. It was tough to move the ball. Kenny, what did you take away from this past week?
To be honest, just as an Eagles fan, I thought they looked really poor. Despite winning, I felt like they looked like a really poor team, and I was really optimistic for the season. So
Kenny,
hopefully they get it together.
Will you shut up about the Eagles? God damn it. Every time you're on anything relating to anything, the Eagles. Like, God damn it.
Kenny, anything non-Eagles related that you want to share? Anything that you sort of noticed, hey, this is off, or this isn't right, or this could be better, or something maybe that surprised you?
Sure. I mean, from an NFL player standpoint, they're just John kind of hit the nail on the head. It was just really sloppy football early going in most of those games yesterday. It was kind of shows that maybe they should play some of the starters more often in the preseason to kind of be geared up for the regular season, because I just feel like a lot of the offenses weren't on the same page throughout the first half of the games yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, another one, it really kind of, the week started that way with the Chiefs game. And I mean, geez, talk about a terrible offense. I think every receiver on that offense probably had the worst day of their career. Pace, what are you taking away from this weekend?
Well, the Eagles didn't look good yesterday. Right after you said that to him, I was like, he's probably going to say something about Jalen Hurts then instead. I'm just teasing you, Kenny. I mean, takeaways yesterday, I think one of the biggest things is you've really seen the passing of the torch. It is very obvious that, the Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, whomever you want to list in that category, it's very obvious that is over. So that means that your perception of good in football, it does not exist at all. And then add in the underwhelming performances from Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. Am I missing anyone, John?
Well,
right,
there's a lot
like,
of bad quarterback play. That's for sure.
well,
Ryan
I'm
Tannehill
referring to
sucked.
these
Daniel
5 that are
Jones
viewed as
sucked.
elite, right? Like
Yeah,
these 5 quarterbacks that are
yeah.
viewed as elite. So take in the passing of the torch, and then these 5 that are supposed to be elite. We haven't seen Josh Allen because, like you said, we're recording on Monday, but they were awful. They were absolutely awful. So throw everything that you know out the window, and that would be my biggest takeaway from week 1. And then that allows you obviously to focus on opportunities. And one of the biggest things we were supposed to know this season is that the Rams are absolutely terrible. We're supposed to know that they suck now. They looked every bit like the team that won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And did Matt Stafford play last year? So why are the Rams bad? And that was one of our best games that we bet on yesterday, was that Rams game, because of that perception. Seattle being a big favorite at home against a team that looked like they returned to their old form.
Yeah, Matt Stafford having the injury issues last season. I think it was his thumb, and at certain points his elbow, and he clearly seems to be past all of that. So that's that'll be really interesting to sort of see how that unfolds. Okay, another big part of getting ready for week 1 and getting set up for that first Sunday of NFL football pace. We've seen your 9 monitor wall on one of our past Behind the Lines episodes. Kenny, you also shared your setup on that episode as well. And really cool stuff. But we are seeing a change this season with how the games are being broadcast, with Google, parent company Alphabet, having a deal with the NFL. So let's talk about that, because Pace, Kenny, and John, I'm sure you have some thoughts as well. But I know you guys have already been sharing your thoughts with how this went for the first weekend. So let's get into it. Kenny, you were the first to post in the Discord group about it, I think. So give me your thoughts right off the bat here.
Yeah, so I it actually took a little while to figure out how to contact YouTube TV. So I spent a couple hours this morning contacting YouTube TV, getting the call escalated up the chain, and I basically bashed Google for the latency issues that they had. It was a good 45 seconds to 60 seconds behind my over-the-air antenna, where I was like, Amazon isn't really even a broadcasting company, and they're faster than my over-the-air antenna for Thursday Night Football. So I'm like, why? I don't understand why Google, such a massive company, can't at least be on par with Amazon when you've had all this time to practice with YouTube TV being around for several years now. And anyway, they ended up crediting me a month of service. So I'm hoping that they get bombarded with calls, and they try to partner up with a company. It's called Phoenix. They promise that they can do under a second delay from over the air antenna for broadcast, so for streaming. So hopefully they partner up with a company like that, use their technology and fix these latency issues. But yeah, it's almost basically, it's unusable for information from a betting standpoint when you're a minute and a half, or a minute or more delayed, because you're 2 plays behind. I mean, a hell of a lot can happen in 2 plays, and that's under normal conditions. Forget about if they're in a 2-minute drill or trying to play a hurry up offense or anything like that, where they're getting plays off every 20 seconds. Now you're 4 plays behind. I mean, you could be seeing first down and there's actually fourth down. So it's it's kind of insane to that kind of delay in this day and age that a company like Google can't fix this.
All right, but at least they've given you a month free of service, so you're going to get a month of 60-second latent service. I don't know how much
good.
that's actually
Kenny doesn't have much money, so it's good that he got that money, that month back.
Yeah, he needed the discount. Right. Pace, you and I talked about this a lot in the off season, a fair amount, because this is something that you were really kind of like, how is this going to work? Is this going to work? And you after seeing it for that first Sunday, I mean, how are you feeling?
Well, I kind of headed into the first Sunday with high hopes, because obviously back in April, YouTube TV said that they promise a high quality streaming experience in direct response to being asked about the latency. So they didn't make any promises about the latency specifically, but that really, led me to think that things could be okay. And one of the reasons why I thought that was because you can buy NBA League Pass and MLB package and a whole other series of live TV channels on Amazon Prime. And if you buy those channels on Amazon Prime, they're not even kind of latent. It's like 2 minutes latent. The other side was Bezos actually said the biggest problem with cutting the cable is latency and sports specifically. So Bezos, I think he said it in 2018. Might have been 2019, but he said he is going to build Amazon into a sub 5-second latent product down the road. So we had no reason to believe that Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime would be so unbelievably close to what's actually happening on the field. And then boom, we flip it on Thursday Night Football last season, and it was just this dream come true. And then obviously with that, the whole offseason when the bidding was occurring with the NFL for the rights to the Sunday ticket, we were really hoping that Amazon would win, knowing that that was the product that they had. And when Google won, it was disappointing, but we really thought that, they would improve the product. And they talked about this high quality streaming experience. And I think the only thing that's high quality really is the fact that you can put 4 games on one screen at the same time. And you really question, okay, well, what did you guys really do for this product? So shame on Google for not figuring this out, and shame on the NFL for not recognizing how important this is. ESPN's, super latent update of what's happening on the field was ahead of YouTube TV yesterday. It's completely unacceptable. And I was sitting there going, okay, I am not committing to YouTube TV. I do not have the devices to broadcast 9 games at once through YouTube TV available and set up for my screens, but I am ready today, this exact day, to go out and get all those devices based on the product that they deliver. And of course, I will not be going out to get those devices. Instead, and this is obviously a really important question, what I'm relying on are sports books feeds that offer the NFL. They are slightly more latent than a good coaxial cable feed to the same latency. That's about the range that they're at. And through a lot of offshore sports books, you can watch these games. And that's going to be my approach for the rest of the season, provided that Google doesn't figure this out.
That now we're relying on the sports books to broadcast the games to us. And for everyone out there who's wondering, hey, why are we talking about latency? Well, first of all, Pace and I, we've done a whole episode on latency. You can go back and listen to that. But when it comes to football, especially in sports betting, these guys are betting live. And a big part of betting live is having eyes on the game and being able to see what is happening in real time. That is a big part of the decision-making process when these guys are putting their wagers in, with oftentimes, just seconds to spare before the line changes or the line closes or moves in a particular direction. So that's why we're talking about this. For all of you out there who might be recreational sports bettors or sort of new in your professional sports betting journey, this is why it's such a big issue. John, how are you tracking the games? What did you do this past weekend to make sure that you had your eyes on everything that they needed to be on?
Yeah, so I'm like more used to being like having latency on all my broadcasts, and these guys are. I've not had an OTA, or even I've not had just cable, like coaxial cable, in over a decade, probably. So I've been relying on the streams. So I am behind. I do track games through the sports books. I use the Score app, the ESPN game tracker as well. It is behind, but I actually find it's at least more reliable than some that are faster. So like they're hardly ever just wrong about something, which I like. So I have typically all of those tools up. But I tend to bet more on like the situation of a game rather than like any one play and making a decision. That's just kind of like my style of like looking at the flow of a game and thinking of whether to bet over, under, whatever on that. But it is incredibly frustrating. And I think it's frustrating not just for bettors, but how many people play fantasy sports and then they get the notification on their phone that somebody scored a touchdown and they haven't even seen the game? They don't even know that team even has the ball. Maybe there was a I think it was the USC game this past weekend on Saturday, where I think they had a 5-play minute 15 drive that went 70 yards, and they had scored before I saw the second play of the drive, because they just kept running to the line. And if you're playing, I think some people can do college fantasy stuff now. People can bet on college props. You could see you get notifications from a betting app that a team has scored, and you barely even see them start their drive because they're moving so fast. Stuff like that is just crazy to me that we can't figure it out.
Well, we can figure it out.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the crazy
intentionally.
thing.
Yeah, they're withholding. They're doing it intentionally, I think. But yeah.
Wow. I mean, who's doing it intentionally, John?
I mean, I think like I don't know that the league like necessarily wants people to have information in real time, because I think they want them to be kind of reliant on these other sources. So like I don't know that it's even in the best interest of the league, or it's definitely not in the best interest of the sports books, which are very heavy league sponsors, to have people with this information in real time. So I'm not saying it's like a conspiracy or anything, but I just think it's when the incentives kind of align for people to bid high and kind of put a word in the ear of like who to choose as a provider and whether they're going to stream live or delay it or not. I think that was probably a factor in it, to be quite honest.
Yeah, motivations, right? Motivations are everything in this business. Okay, I want to sort of start looking forward and getting some advice for our audience on how they can approach the NFL season as a whole, but even more than just the season as a whole, approaching next week, for example, or an individual week. So, Kenny, give us a sense of how you are going to prepare for next week, having sort of 1 week behind you, 1 week under the belt, so to speak. How are you going to move forward, and sort of what's your approach going to be for the week ahead, or even the next few weeks ahead, and then the season as a whole?
Sure. Actually, I've realized quickly in this week that I was a little underprepared with just the books that I had, how much I had in each book, and everything. I had some challenges in the off season. Just with banking. Bank of America doesn't like professional gamblers like Daniel Negreanu, who's had his bank accounts closed by Bank of America. That happened to me in May, which kind of caused a lot of issues for me. I had college savings accounts and everything for my kids and everything. I had my stock accounts, everything. They Bank of America and Merrill Lynch closed their relationship with me, so I scrambled and got different banks, and now Bank of America allowed me to move hundreds of thousands of dollars in a day with no issues. I switched to Chase and TD, and I've run into all kinds of restrictions, so I can't even fund the accounts the way I used to. So I've run into some obstacles that way, and just getting the amount of money that I need in the accounts to be able to fire at the books, so to speak. Like I don't really look at money as I don't really look at money as like an actual dollar amount when I'm putting it into a sports book. I look at it as more as ammunition. It's basically me versus the book, and I'm trying to take them down, and I don't have enough ammo in a lot of these books to really put a dent into what I would normally typically do. So my biggest thing for preparation for next week is getting some more accounts open, getting the ones that I have with more funds. I did build those bankrolls a lot yesterday, which is going to help, but I still want to have more in, just to have, in case I actually lose a couple bets, unlike I did yesterday where I didn't lose any. But I just in case I lose bets, so I have backup ammunition to fire at them next week.
Wow. Okay, Kenny with the big dog problems over here. Mo money, mo problems, eh, Kenny? These are the kinds of things that I think those of us who are recreational sports bettors or new to sports betting and looking to become pros want to aspire to one day. These are the kind of problems I'd love to have. All right, John, what are you doing for the week ahead? How will you prepare and do your homework for week 2 and then even week 3 and 4 and going forward?
Yeah. So I made sure to record all the games. So while I'm just going about my day during the week, this week I'm just gonna have the games on. I'm gonna try to make sure I watch every game all the way through, at least in some capacity, because I just want to see a lot of the things that we don't pick up on. Because we see the highlight plays, we see the big plays, but I really want it's like that Saints Titans game, and I know I'm wearing my Titans thing, but I think for me I like the Titans more just because of the betting unders on them than actually rooting for the team. But I want to get to the bottom of that game. It's like, was it really why were the defenses so strong? Was it really such bad play on the offense, or just games that I don't know that a lot of people would really want to go back and watch again. I'm going to kind of study that and look at see how I can kind of adjust power ratings on some of what I have on the trenches in a lot of these games. So I like to go back and watch all the games and just kind of figure that stuff out. And then I'm also going to watch kind of the way the pregame money is coming in, so I can get an idea of where the public is going to be on some of these games and where the professional money is going to be. So I have an idea of, it'll help me inform decisions. We just saw Seattle get blown out at home as a big favorite, and we just saw Detroit go on the road and beat the Chiefs, the defending champs, and now Detroit's at home laying like a touchdown almost to Seattle. And I think if you'd set that line over a week ago, it wouldn't be close to that, right? So it's like, how can I figure out where this money's coming in, who's overreacting to what, and then we can leverage that information to find value when those games start going.
Yeah, wow, look at that. Going back and watching the tape. I love it. I mean, that really is studying and doing the homework. That's awesome to hear that we have a guy in the inplayLIVE community that's doing that diligently. John, thank you for that work. Pace, coming over to you now. You're a guy who famously likes to ignore all the noise, live in the moment, bet live. What do you do to prepare for the week?
It's all about what we touched on. It's all about having eyes on the game for me. I got into a conversation yesterday. We were really fortunate to have a couple of guys from inplayLIVE that I hadn't bet with before in the room with me, and that's always exciting for me because you can always learn from everyone, right? And one of the guys, I'll just keep him anonymous. He sat down and he popped open his setup, and I saw things I'd never seen before. And he's like, hey, do you have a pen? And he's got pre-printed tracking sheets because he's a pen and paper guy. So they're Excel sheets that are pre-printed out, and he's writing in each wager, which for me, I just think about my hand hurting in school writing an essay or something like that. And sure enough, he's got sheets of his tracking filled out. And I think real-time tracking is important. I really struggle with it otherwise, unless I'm looking up historic data and things like that. So from a preparation standpoint, it's having those games on, learning as much as you can from different people and different setups. He had tripods with phones around him that weren't even for betting. They were for information. So it's crazy. If I was like, where does this team have the ball? He'd answer immediately because he had the score open on one of those that showed the down and distance of where they were. But for me, I would think hey, you know what? I'm just going to put this thing right beside me. But he had it, with this curvy swivel tripod, right in his face so that he could just get to it quickly. And then the last thing that I would say is I love a lot of the stuff that John does. And I actually do a lot of it myself, but I don't tend to do it in the same way that he does necessarily. I might look at things like red zone efficiency, teams that kick the most field goals, teams that punt the most, or what the average scoring is for a league in a season or a team in a season that's at the bottom, to justify whether or not it's a good spot to take something that's really contrarian. So I can give you an example of something like that. The lowest scoring football team tends to put up about 16 and a half points of offensive scoring per game on once the season's said and done. That's the worst team. And that ignores defensive and special teams scores entirely. So when you have that kind of information in your arsenal and trends change, so you see that maybe the worst teams are scoring less this season or they're scoring more this season. And then I obviously like to look at the top side of that as well. But when you have that information, you recognize hey, these guys, everyone thinks they suck. Everyone's betting against them. Everyone thinks that they can't score in this game. Obviously, coming off of the Giants Sunday Night Football, there are games where teams genuinely and legitimately don't score. But when you have that information available to you, it helps you to identify value live. And I look for data that justifies decision making. That's ultimately going to give me more confidence when a wager loses, knowing that it was the right decision to make long term.
Wow, I love hearing stuff like this because I don't think I could find the time to put in the kind of work that you guys are putting in. So I am just grateful and thankful that I get to bet with you guys and know that you guys have already done all of that legwork, and I get to benefit off of it just by being a part of the community and tuning in to the live streams when they're on. So again, thank you guys for that. I really appreciate that, but I know that many other members of the community also very likely appreciate it. And again, if you're on the outside and you're thinking to yourself, well, what's this inplayLIVE thing all about? This is the kind of stuff you get to benefit from. So that behind the lines promo code is there for you if you want to join. All right. I want to get into the nitty gritty of betting live, and Pace, you kind of did it there for us in that answer there. But Kenny, I'm going to come over to you. When you're betting live on the NFL, what exactly are you looking for? Are you trying to make wagers on every single game, or is there something specific you're looking for?
Andrew has a great skill in that he can scan all the games and kind of get a really good sense of the games, like as a whole. Like I don't have that skill. I kind of get more razor sharp focused on either one or two games at most is really where my attention span goes. But I kind of get a sense of, because I'm also looking more for end of game, and I'm not necessarily looking quarter by quarter. More of my main focus is like end of game strategies. So I get razor sharp focused with like basically one or two games where a light goes on to me. Just from my experience of betting, for so many years and watching so many games, I basically get a sense of, I've seen this game before. I know how it's going to end, and I'm pretty sure what the final score is going to be within a few points. So that's kind of where my main skill set is. I just get razor sharp focused on one or two games. I have a tough time kind of viewing the whole thing. Now, if somebody brings up, oh, look at this game, then I can kind of start evaluating score, distance, time left, and everything. But I tend to get kind of that tunnel vision, which is definitely a flaw of mine, but it's also, I guess, a skill in some sense.
I think it's a tremendous skill, and I'll tell you why. What Kenny just said completely ignored that means that you're not betting on games that aren't working for the things that he is looking for. So what he said there has a massive discipline built into it. And that's one of the things about becoming a pro that really differentiates you from the rest of the sports betting community. And that is that you don't make long-term decisions that will impact your family, finances, well-being, all those kind of things. Kenny knows that he has a lifestyle that is like very few people in the world. And in order to upkeep that, he can't be betting every game because he will be a net loser. So when he's hyper-focused on, let's call it 2 games, but then someone else says, what about this game? He actually ends up being focused on a lot more of them through the vision of other people, but he's not betting on them unless it checks off a whole series of boxes that he then deploys his bankroll on. And because of that, I think it's important to look back at some of the results. Like, he dominated Thursday Night Football, absolutely capitalized on the Chiefs really struggling in that game. That happened to fit what he was doing really, really well. So that's great, but that's just one game. On Sunday, he didn't dominate every single game, but he dominated 4 or 5 of the games throughout the entire slate of the day. And there was a time, 3 Septembers ago, when Kenny would have made probably about $10,000 on that Sunday by betting those strategies. And you can pretty much assume that you can add a 0 to that comfortably these days with his scaling that he's done over the years. So when you're in this mindset, you start more and more eliminating things that aren't working and start focusing more and more on things that are working, which then, of course, like he said, requires maybe a game or 2, and that's it.
Yeah, no, love to sort of get that sort of insider knowledge. And, Kenny, you talked about, knowing what a team will do because you've seen them do it before. There's just so much value in that experiential knowledge, that sort of, historical knowledge that you have sort of deep in the back of your brain that just brings so much value to the group when they're wagering live. John, what specifically are you looking for when there's a big 1 o'clock slate, 1 o'clock Eastern slate of games on. We've got 8, 9, 10 games on. How do you sort of approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely kind of do the same thing. I probably somewhat of a mix between what Kenny's talking about and then also looking at like all of the games at once. So I'll tend to try to focus on the first quarter and the first half when those games when they start going. I'm trying to look a lot at down and distance, who has the ball, where the ball is, and how many points I have to give on maybe an under or a spread or something that might be already covering or something like that in that quarter or that half. And I will 100% just ignore games that are really high scoring. So it's not in my blood to want to bet on people to score or to bet an over or to bet somebody to cover a spread. If I see a game that's like 7-7 in the first quarter, I'd probably just going to forget that game exists. Like I didn't watch 1 second of that Chargers game until we like looked at it at the very end because it's the only game still on. That game did not interest me at all. Everybody I've talked to said it was the best game of the week. It was awesome. Like
I was going to say the same thing, John. I was like, Tyreek Hill apparently went off. I don't think I saw a single play in the Chargers game. I don't think I saw one single play in that Chargers. I was like, they got like 60 points. I was like, that game is not interest me at all.
Yeah, because all that speaks to me is just there's just volatility in that game. Like if there's just scoring happening all over the time, to me it's just volatility, and it's just kind of what I want to stay away from. So I'm looking for a lot of low scoring games. We loved that Bengals Browns game yesterday. It was like terrible weather. Nobody could move the ball. Joe looked terrible. He had missed all of camp. A lot of things like that. It's just so that games like that were great. So that's not really what I'm looking for. Just teams struggling to move the ball, and looking for like people backed up. How can I take advantage of this situation where it's going to be very unlikely that we see any points within the next like 7 to 8 minutes at least.
You know what's so interesting about that Miami game too that I find kind of funny is that it was, I think there's 7 lead changes and I think the score was in the 60s. I think the total ended up in the 60s.
Yeah.
So obviously really high scoring for the NFL. Everyone's talking about Tua being the potential MVP now, all this stuff. And it's so funny because the Chargers were seconds away from just doing what both teams were doing all game in scoring again. And if they had kicked a game-winning field goal, I know they didn't, and this is the world of sports. But if they had lost that game, none of that would have even remotely had been, discussed at all. But because they squeaked out the win, I think they won by 2. Now it's all, Tyreek Hill MVP, Tua MVP, But I mean, you got to also give them credit too. I mean, they did put up the numbers that they put up.
As someone who had a Tua 50-1 MVP ticket, and he was the favorite when he got hurt last year, I'm very annoyed to see him still come out and do very well. Though I'm rooting for him. Course,
right. Yeah.
I just hope, to be honest, I just hope he doesn't get hit in the head at all this season.
Yeah.
Because that could be a really bad seed.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of fantasy owners are worried about. If you've got Tua, you're very concerned about that. But also just from a fan perspective and just the enjoyment of watching a player thrive and play, but knowing that risk is always there. Yeah, it's certainly concerning to say the least.
And, from a fantasy standpoint, Shane, yesterday was one of the worst days of fantasy football ever. Obviously, there's bad weather across the country, but at the same time, teams did just genuinely struggle. And if you're look at the average points per week scored, last week was way, way, way below the average. And that's where, if you do follow fantasy, and I know we touched on this already, where some of those overlaps can occur where you go, oh, like, why aren't my players putting up any points? Like all that kind of stuff. Well, their chances are there might be an opportunity to translate that into profitable sports betting. Yeah,
certainly an opportunity to take that knowledge and apply it, in sort of the field of live betting play. But that Chargers Dolphins game sort of stands out as the one that was, super high scoring, really electric. But, to John's point, and I think he said this maybe back on a baseball episode when we had him on. John, you like to bet against human achievement. And that really stuck with me, that line. And you certainly conveyed that point again here, where you're saying, you're looking for that ugly game where teams are struggling. And hey, if guys are scoring early, forget it. You're putting that game to the side. You're not even going back to it, right? Yeah. Okay. Absolutely love that line though. It just makes me laugh, and it makes me think a lot when I'm looking at games and what I'm going to place a wager on and how and when. That particular line really stuck with me. Okay, I want to get a sort of your personal kind of not reflections but outlook on the season ahead, because how we define a successful season of betting, whether it's NFL football, college football, basketball, baseball, these are sort of important things, and it's a way of kind of getting your mind right as you go into a new season. So I want to ask you, and Kenny, I'll start with you. What does a successful NFL season look like to you? And that could be a bankroll related thing, or it could be simply a matter of you're trying something new and you want to see if something works, or you're testing something, or you want to find out maybe something that you thought would work isn't, or what does a successful NFL season look like to you? What will make you happy come Super Bowl? You asking Kenny what'll make him happy? You're hoping for some philosophical answer. That's one thing.
Just to be honest, I just want to make a ton of money. That's really it. I mean, I'm in this for the money. I'm not.
That's it.
I'm not in this to cure cancer or anything. I just want to make a ton of money.
You're in it for the money. So how much money does it take then for the Golden Goose to say, I crushed that season?
Couple NFL with the overlap of some college basketball in there. If come like April 1st, I have 4 or 5 million more than I have now, I think that's a successful.
Wow!
That's a successful.
Listen to that.
That would be my goal.
4 or 5 million people. Again, this is what you're aspiring to if you are going down the path of trying to become a professional sports bettor. This is how we grow and something to aspire to. Kenny, you were not trying to win $4 or $5 million 10 years ago, right?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
something to work towards. Okay, John, same question to you. What does a successful NFL season look like to you at the end of the season? Is it all about the zeros?
The zeros are definitely important, since this is my job. So it's there, but I guess I'll try to find another answer. So I build a lot of I do a lot of analytics, a lot of modeling and stuff like that, and I do that for both football and basketball. And I think part of it at the end of the season is trying to figure out how well did something do, what about the models or what about the analytics that I'm doing worked and what didn't work and what needs to be adjusted going forward. So as an example, let's just use an example. I think road teams really did well yesterday. And if you followed kind of the trend of home field advantage in the last couple decades, as if you just watch the way Vegas kind of handicaps that, home field advantage is really going away in a lot of professional sports, and especially in the NFL. So there are certain teams I give no home field advantage to when I'm handicapping games and stuff like that. So how can I adjust that? Did I do a good job of adjusting that? Another one is just did I improve my ROI over the previous season? So if let's say I push through $1 million in aggregate of bets and I made 100,000 and I had 10% ROI in one season, can I get that to 12 or 13% the next year? Can I get to 15%? Because within all of that money that you're betting and all the bets you make, there's bad bets. We all make bad bets. And how can I eliminate those bad bets from what I'm doing, right? How can I get my ROI better? No one's ever going to have an insane 100% or whatever. Nobody's just going to win every bet. But if I'm winning 60% this year, can I win 65% next year? Or can I improve that as the season goes on? To me, that's what's really important, because and making sure to note what you're doing that actually changes that. So that's why I agree earlier. Pace said tracking is really important. I try to track every single wager I make in real time with as much granularity as possible. Who's playing in the game? What bet did I make? How much did I bet on it? What was the number? All that stuff. So at the end of the year, I can go back. It's hey man, I took a bunch of these under 6.5s and a quarter, and I didn't make any money on that. So I'm going to stop doing that. It's and constantly reevaluate what I'm doing. So that's how I would judge success in another way besides just making money. Can I do it more efficiently?
Yeah, anyone who's listened to this podcast for a little bit now knows about how tracking changed my sports betting life once I joined inplayLIVE, and it really, just I do it live, I track live, and I love to go back and just have a look at things. But I want to ask you something there, John, because you touched on something, and I'm wondering, does it all come down to tracking, or do you know in the moment? And the question is, how do you know if it was a bad bet? Do you know it was a bad bet because it lost? And do you ever make bad bets that won? Where you look back and go, that was a bad bet. I got lucky there.
Oh yeah. Normally, if a bet's bad, like I wouldn't say right after you make it, but pretty soon after you make it. So there's an example last year. I remember making a bet. It was like a full game under, but I made the bet before halftime. And when we got to halftime, no one had scored, but the number was the same. And all we did was accept greater risk because the book was like kind of assuming that that it was just going to go that way anyway. And so it's like, oh, I just made a note. It's like, hey, don't ever bet a full game under 2 minutes left in the first half. You're accepting greater risk. So that was something I noticed immediately. Another one is like, you make a bet and there's multiple turnovers that happen and something. It's like, oh, maybe I won this under, but they gained 200 yards since I made the bet. This was a bad bet. Like I feel lucky to win. But then I had Texas Tech to cover a line in the game on Saturday, and they threw a pick six when the kid should have just gone down. And I would have won my bet if he had just gone down like a smart person. But instead, he gave his team a chance to lose the game by scoring a touchdown. That was a good bet that lost. I should make that bet again, and I will make that bet again. So it's not about whether it wins or loses. It's about if you did it 100 times, would you win or lose the majority of those?
Yeah. I love that what you said there too. You often know almost immediately after clicking the button if it was a bad bet, and you just have that feeling. I know I've felt that myself, and then sure enough, it plays out kind of the way you expect it to play out, and you're like, "Yep, that was a bad bet. Why did I do that?" The reason I'm bringing up this question though, guys, is because and sort of trying to go beyond the dollars and cents of it all is because when I went into last NFL season, I was new in inplayLIVE, and I think I was sort of basing my success off of zeros, and sort of like if my bankroll goes from this to this, it'll be successful. And then I very quickly realized maybe 4 weeks into the season that wait a minute, I can't base my definition of success on dollars because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Even though I've been watching football for 20 plus years, 25 years, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know how to do what these guys are doing live in the moment. I need to learn, and I need to figure this out and learn how they approach games, learn how they think about the game. Once sort of as the season went on, I feel like I did that and I accomplished that. So for me, last season was a successful season, even though I didn't make anywhere, near six figures off of the NFL season. So that's sort of why I'm bringing this up because, Pace, you often talk a lot about how do you define success? So I want to know, how do you personally define a successful NFL season? What does a successful NFL season look like to you? And then I guess the other question then would be, if somebody's listening for the first time or they're early in their journey, how should they try to define success for themselves?
Right. Yeah, I think it's a loaded question for sure. And I think that's something Kenny and I really learned last season was, number one, we're not bulletproof. That's obvious to say, but Kenny and I really went through I think it was a 3 or 4 week run where both of us were like, what the fuck are we doing? And why are we doing this? And is this working? And are we making good bets? Because it doesn't feel like we are right now in a sport and time of year that had never happened to us before. Two very different people that have a completely different path of success and completely different strategies where both sides of that were not working. So one of the biggest successes that we had last season, the zeros came, but despite all that or factoring all that in, was that we overcame adversity and found new ways to succeed. And one of the biggest things, like touching on John's, sort of method of success, was we really had a weird NFL season. And you might not think it's significant today, but in 2020, scoring was up like we had never seen before. We talk about home field advantage and those types of things. There actually was no one in the stands. Some stadiums were playing noise. Like, it's just ridiculous. So adapting to that world where there's an element to this being like practice. And I don't know if any of you have played sports before that are listening, but all it takes when you're in high school is the right girl to show up to a game, or your family, or whatever, where the way you play changes. And you can't tell me that those guys, feel as excited for a Sunday in an empty stadium versus coming out, with fucking cannons firing and smoke shooting and crowd screaming, and the list goes on and on. So that was a strange year, and it definitely impacted the way we were betting then, but it was easy. It really was easy that year. And, now today we're kind of coming off of last year with just this unbelievable levels of success and trying to translate it into a new season. So yeah, how would I define it? I think consistency would be one thing, but then the next thing that I would say is giving people, the right information, tools, and impact so that they can succeed. And I saw last year the way people learning to bet within our community start to translate across sports. So things that we were doing in basketball emerged as things that we were doing in football. And I recognized that people were making money during mine and Kenny's struggle and doing really well as well. So hearing those stories and then putting all of that information together in a way to empower the group to make decisions for themselves that they own, and they pick the way they handle certain things. Kenny and I are always going to be the people, and John are always going to be the people that can identify certain situations based on potential value through book discrepancies, which many of the members do on their own, but through book discrepancies, but also motivational discrepancies based on what we know about what's going on the field currently, from weather to motivations to whatever the case may be. But how you actually act on that information is the knowledge that the group needs as individuals, not collectively, as individuals, to actually be able to succeed on their own from a learning, growth, and financial standpoint. So if we can look back on the season and we have more of the right members succeeding over the long term. So that doesn't mean that the group size, doubles or triples. More of the right people that recognize this ownership that they need to take in the grand scheme of their personal journeys and their success, that yes, do have some of those zeros to back it up. That's what it's all about.
Love hearing that, of getting sort of the right people, to be part of the group and contributing to the group on an ongoing basis. Kenny, I've got to ask you, since Pace brought it up, how did you deal with that downtime of the year last year?
Yeah, it was definitely a really rough time, because like normally September is kind of that month for me where I don't have an insane amount of profit, just because I'm new season, kind of taking it easy. Kind of, there could be rule changes, there could be personnel changes. So September is kind of my learning month, and I kind of ramp it up from there. This struggle that we had last year was kind of right in the middle of the season, which I never, ever experienced before. So it was a bit of a shock to the system. I basically lowered my bets from there on out, and ramped it up basically as if it was September again, and then we started hitting our stride again. But that was a rough couple of weeks, and it was right at the beginning of when college basketball was starting, so I started picking up some more college basketball and everything with that, and just kind of making small bets with that. So I was working like 7 days a week, basically at that time. So I kind of worked myself through that little bit of a struggle. One more thing to touch on with your question, though, that I was thinking of as John and Andrew were talking is I lost kind of the DraftKings has always been my favorite book. We're on the show before talking about some of the great things that they've done for me over the years, and I've beaten them by more than all the other books probably combined. So they, but I pretty much lost them as a book for this year too. So, my max bets there are super small, where they used to let me bet, 20, 30, 40,000, whatever I want to bet with them. So I've kind of lost them as a book this year. So if I can make, even to be honest, if I lowered my goal to say 2 million, and I was able to do that, doing it through all of these other books, combined, I think that would be a decent goal as well. Not using kind of DraftKings as a crutch, and using some of the offshore books and things, some of the books that technically don't limit, I guess, to a certain extent.
I love that. Yeah, not using one book as a crutch. I know that, I have shared my Bet365 crutch, and losing that crutch and how that benefited me in a big way. And I know other people in the community have shared similarly with Bet365 specifically, and end up getting limited on that. And it turns out to be one of the best things, because you end up not relying on that crutch and sort of gaining strength from it. So Kenny, good luck in that effort and getting off of DK. All right, guys. Well, and for all of you listening out there, you're hearing Kenny talk about college basketball. Yes, that's another big sport for inplayLIVE. So is the NBA. So is the NHL. The inplayLIVE isn't all just about NFL football, even though it is a very, very big part of what we do, because, hey, one, we all love it. I think, we all have a lot of fun with NFL football, but also, it allows for guys like Kenny to place those big wagers because the market size is so much bigger. And so it provides a lot of opportunity. All right, guys, I think we will leave it there for this week. But for all of you listening, please be aware, we're going to be talking about a lot more other sports, but I think we'll probably also be talking more about the NFL as the season goes on. All right, guys, till next week, keep eating those books. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join inplayLIVE, use promo code Behind the Lines.